as a defensive back, you can't give up a big play, but probably there's a threat all around. You can't. I mean, there's plenty of threats. How do you approach that? I mean, you just basically play your game and make your checkoffs and.
Yeah, I mean, nothing really changes from week to week, in that aspect. Just, their offense is, getting your eyes, where they're not supposed to be and kind of have you on your heels, like Coach was saying. So I think if we just continue being the aggressor and, you got to stop the run first. Once you take away the run game, it's a little bit easier, to just kind of play the pass as a DB. But just kind of play fast, know what you're doing, put your eyes in the right spot, and we should be good.
Clay, Evan mentioned a moment ago that this is an older group, and here we are coming in toward the end of your sixth season here. Seemed like for the first 4 years you were here, or somewhere around there, we never really could say that you were an older group, and all of a sudden now you've got a really experienced football team. Does that change how you coach these guys individually and as a group at all when you've got more experienced players?
Well, I think the trust factor is always big, and I think it's even in your preparation. Things you do and practice, and yeah, absolutely. You love being an old football team. And I just think here the formula for here, and I think if you look back in the history of our success here, when we've had success, we've largely been an older football team. I still think to this day we have got to be a development football team, and we're not going to have tons of transfers, and again, not saying I'm anti that. If you could plug in, it's not an easy place to take a transfer and get them into school and get them where they need to be. So, certainly having an older football team that you can develop, and I think we've kind of grown into that. And I think we were kind of heading that way. And then, obviously the quarterback position had been a little bit different. And I think probably Tyler's a great example, just an older, mature guy that you plugged in there and playing certainly a key position. But, I looked at the game a year ago, and, we didn't play I did a poor job of getting us ready to go, and we were really struggling offensively, no confidence. And they were Mercer was the aggressor in that game. I told our team this morning, you get the tape, watch it. Sometimes that's not an easy thing to admit, but they were. And, we threw 4 picks, had a touchdown call back, I think 2 inside the 10. We get a field goal block because we don't get in a tackle over formation, just some stuff like that. I think you fix some of those things by having older guys, and I'd certainly always like to be an older football team, particularly at certain key positions.
Evan, I understand if you can't talk about playoffs, but we can. I know you're one of a handful of guys that started the last playoff game, which seems like a 2019, but obviously you always want to make playoffs, but is there any, even if it's subconsciously in your mind, any desire to get back there? Because that was obviously a pretty tough day at Austin Peay that day. Do you ever think about that and try to get back?
Yeah, actually I saw a lot of old friends that this past weekend that played in that game. We kind of talked about that game, kind of how tough it was. But, of course, that's what you come here to do. You come here to, win championships, make the playoffs, make runs. So, yeah, of course you're always thinking about it, but, this game is the, first or next step to making the playoffs. So, it's in the back of your mind, but you really, you're just focused on Mercer, really. So.
Coach, you mentioned looking back at the film for Mercer. Really, the past, I guess, 2 times, it sort of mirrored the past 2 times coming into this year that you played Chattanooga. Could you talk about, you guys kind of struggled to run the ball against Chattanooga the previous 2 times and have struggled against Mercer. What were they doing defensively, Mercer, that made them so tough to run against?
Well, to be honest with you, I think, John, between the spring season and then the fall season, we probably struggled to run it largely against a lot of people. We struggled in lots of ways. It's funny to watch, and I said the same thing when we played Chattanooga. We had largely the same team coming back, but so I knew we were a completely different football team, even though we had a lot back and they did too. And I think it's pretty evident you can see that, and I think the same thing now. I don't know. I think they're pretty. You watch the Mercer group, pretty simple. I say simple. They don't overwhelm you with schemes. I think they're built a little bit like us. They play really good team defense. I know they got the one kid. 3, the linebackers are a really, really good player. By far, I think leads them in tackles by far. But again, a lot of those names are guys kind of like our team. I'm not sure you could name a bunch of those guys. They just play really well together. They are really, really athletic. I think maybe not as big, particularly up front as Chattanooga, but but really, really athletic, run to the ball, aggressive. That's just kind of how they play. So they've done a good job over there. And I think really what's the game? We took the opening drive, went down and scored last year, and get it called back, get a field goal, and then next thing you know, we turned it over about 3 times, and you get behind. Well, that affects how you're going to run the ball too, and that's certainly not a recipe to run it. But as I've said, for us to have success, we got to be good in both, and we'll have to be able to run the ball to win this game. We'll have to, and I think we can do that in a variety of different ways. But I don't think anybody, even them, nobody's going to win this game being one-dimensional. I think both teams are really good. I think against the run. I think we're maybe 1 and 2 in rushing in the league too. So, it's a little bit of strength on strength. They throw it around a little bit more than we do. But I think, like I said, we do things differently, but I think a little bit of the mindset as far as what we're trying to do, we're pretty similar teams.
Well, Coach, special teams are always important, and we've had some good success this year for Furman. As you look at this game, how important is it? They've got a couple of guys, or one particularly on the kickoff return and punt return. Does that become a key factor in the game?
Yeah, it will be. I mean, certainly we're aware of their guy back there. But I think Wayne Anderson actually leads the league in kickoff returns. We've kicked off pretty well. We've been really solid there. Warren's good against Chattanooga. As we'd like to be. We dropped a handoff. Dropped a snap on a field goal that could have been huge in the game, and had an 11-yard punt late in the game. Other than that, we punted the ball pretty good. So there's some things we got to do better. But that'll be big, and I think most everybody we play, we got a chance to have an advantage in the special games, but you still got to go execute it. So, but no, I think all those factors are going to be huge, in this game. It was a big play in the game a year ago, and again, it's a simple adjustment in our formation that's an automatic for us that we didn't do, and the guy he tipped the ball off the edge, and they take a 2-minute drive, and next thing you know, it goes from a 6-point game or a 1-score game to a 3-score game. So. That's how big of an impact it can have.
Evan, as an offensive lineman, when you play some teams, particularly ones you're favored over, you hear afterwards, well, early in the game, they were jumping all over the place. We had to do something. When you play a Chattanooga or a Mercer, it seems like you both are known quantities to the other. They're good. They're hard to block. But is there security in playing someone that you reliably know what they're going to do?
Yeah, I think for sure. Like it was definitely difficult playing like VMI a couple weeks ago. Just kind of what they do defensively. It's kind of hard to ID them and see them. At the same time, Chattanooga and Mercer probably have a little bit better players. So, that's also a little different challenge. But, I was just watching film of them right before I came up here. And, they're not too hard to find, but they do have, a few wrinkles in their defense, and we'll just have to adjust and take care of them. So.
Clay, I know you're after games doing our post-game radio interviews with Marcus. I'm not sure that you ever get a chance to hear what he does with the players, but after the Chattanooga game, Tyler was obviously very happy, and he made the comment that he had never been part of a winner at the collegiate level. And I kind of laughed at that a little bit, and I actually tweeted out after the game, Tyler Huff's a winner. Is there any question that he's proven that with your team this year?
I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, I've said this before. Just when Tyler got here, he didn't graduate. He graduated 3 years. He's a commissioned second lieutenant in the Army National Guard. Got married this summer, and he's just a mature guy. And he came in. And when we recruited him, the thing I told him was, I said, we want somebody to come in here and compete for the job. And we didn't feel like we had enough depth and competition at the spot, and that's the only thing we ever told him. He's coming off an ACL injury. It's funny, we were talking the other day, I was talking to Tommy Spanger, and if they had not chosen, they chose not to play him that last fall. And he had a torn ACL, and I don't think he actually knew it. But if they had chosen to play him, he probably would have played that fall, And, who knows? But he ended up, when he didn't play, he decided, well, let me get my knee checked out, and then he had a torn ACL, got it fixed. So he's still only a little over a year from that. But came in. I think these guys would tell you. I think the thing about him, he just worked. You know, when we told him to get reps, he jumped in there and got reps, and didn't assume anything. And you know, I don't know, probably a couple weeks into August, we felt like he had, maybe halfway into August, you kind of felt like 2 or 3 weeks into it, he won the job, and certainly has started really well. I do think there's probably a little bit of time earlier in the year, probably right before he hurt his elbow. You know, maybe was pressing a little bit, trying to make too many plays, and you know, but it's been fun to watch his maturation, I guess you would say it. Just because I still think if you go back and look, he had not played that much football before he got here. But I think he just appreciates being here, and I think he appreciates, you know, the guys he gets a chance to be around every day, and he's certainly been a great addition, just as a guy, you know, to the culture here. And the culture was pretty good, and he only made it better.
Hugh, you hear sometimes about teams kind of learning how to win. Y'all have had some wins this year. I think maybe other teams might have lost, maybe Charleston Southern, maybe Western or Chattanooga. But your background, you know, you lost one game in high school. Have you used any of your experience in that and kind of like, I mean, and you know what it takes to win just from what the kind of program you came from in high school. Has that kind of translated at all in your college play? Just curious.
I mean, not really individually, but I mean, I think even when I came in, I could still tell there was, you know, obviously there was already a winning culture here when I got here, no matter what, just like there was in high school. And yeah, I mean, we've, you know, maybe last year we lost some games that we shouldn't have, but I think the culture's always been set here. You know, it's a, you know, winning program, you know, all time. So, you know, there's a lot of similarities actually, you know, from everybody. So, I mean, but I've taken, you know, obviously some things individually that I learned from high school and, you know, obviously continue doing it in college. But I think as a whole, you know, this program already is used to winning and expects to win.
Coach, Josh Harris obviously made some tremendous plays in the previous game against Chattanooga. Can you talk about him? And I know he, I guess, had an injury in that game. What's his availability for this week?
He's fine. You know, I think one thing kind of lost, you know, we really didn't have him or Dom almost the whole second half of that game, and they're both good and ready to go. He took on the hit that he took, but he's fine. And Dom the same way. But you know, I think Josh was these guys too. Josh was a good football player when he got here, and you could tell he'd come from a good program, had been coached. You know, was maybe ahead of where some kids normally would be. I think the biggest thing for him that has changed, and he played well as a freshman, but you know, strength and weight. You know, he gained almost 25 pounds in the off season. You know, which has shown up certainly on the field. And I think the addition, I think a little bit of the pieces, you know, you got development of Luke Shifley, you got Kendall Dean coming in. You know, certainly Ryan Miller's ability and Wayne's moving. I just think, and obviously Tyler coming in. I think there are a lot of things that he benefited from. He benefited from having an older offensive line, you know, that's played really well because I think they've protected well all year. So, but again, he's a fun guy to watch. He does some interesting things at practice, man. He makes some plays that you just kind of wow. But it's almost become, I used to laugh. Luther Broughton was a guy like that. Luther Broughton would do stuff when we were here. He would reach back with one hand and catch a ball, and Josh does that kind of stuff sometimes. And you just kind of take it for granted now that he does that. But, you know, he's certainly got a bright future here and has already done well. And he'll need to play well Saturday for us.
As for both Hugh and Evan, I was down there post game after the Chattanooga game, and the emotion of the moment down there for you guys. What was it like? I mean, it was a pretty cool atmosphere to be down there, and for those that got to play in the game, what was it like, Evan?
It was incredible. Probably my most favorite moment of Furman football since I've been here. Awesome feeling. You know, all my old teammates, old friends were in the locker room post game, and you know, we were just laughing and cutting up and celebrating a huge win. And you know, I don't think teams in years past, I don't think we would have won that game. And kind of felt like we broke through a little bit and kind of, you know, maybe beat some demons or, you know, something like that. So yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome.
I mean, yeah, like you said, it was obviously awesome, but I do want to keep doing it. It makes you, you know, want to experience it again and again. So just be kind of coming addicted to that feeling I think will help us just keep trying to chase that.
It never stops fascinating me what the word changes. Now we have a winning culture. But the difference, I see so many times and from various levels where it seems like one team, if the ball bounced differently, they'd be 5-3 instead of 3-5. And I really think that all evens out. There is something intangible, and I think maybe when I've watched Tyler Huff and when I watched him at PC, the thing that I see is that he's having so much fun, is that he's just full. I mean, there's nothing more fun than winning. It's not just winning knows the grindstone. Winning is fun. And I am so happy that y'all are experiencing that. But I mean, you see that transition where you get that week and you pull out a game that maybe you shouldn't, and then it all starts to flow from there?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say so. Definitely getting, further into my career, and I'm trying to, subconsciously just enjoy the wins more because, I can't play football forever. And, like Western Carolina, it wasn't the, prettiest win, or even Citadel. I mean, there's so many games that were, kind of ugly wins, but I mean, fun's in winning, and, they're hard to, it's hard to win. So you celebrate it, so.
Clay, I want to circle back to the talk again about having a veteran football team and you talking about Furman having to be a program that develops players and brings them along. And I know that's been your philosophy since you walked on campus. That's obviously not for everybody, especially in today's landscape of college football. How do you convince kids that maybe that's the best track for them and then retain them once they get here and get into that system?
Well, I think, I think the biggest thing is here, one thing's never changed, in our recruiting mantra, so to speak, as we go forward, is finding guys who value the education, and we have an incredible education, who love playing football, because I think that has continued to rise. I just always say it can't be the most important thing, but it needs to be way up there, because if either of those two things aren't really, really high, you don't need to come here, okay? You're going to be challenged academically, and then certainly seeing the value of what it's going to mean to you when you finish here, and the doors will open up for you. The degree, the education. I think Furman does an unbelievable job as an institution of preparing kids for life beyond. We certainly hope we have a say in some of that too, in that development. But I think there's a lot of kids that want that, and for me to sit in the office with a mom and dad, and, I think this is a great example. This is our whole team, and that's what's great about working here. They're different. They got all kinds of different backgrounds. But their core values, what's important to them, the character aspect of it, all those factors. Now, can that get a little skewed in the transfer world and all that? Yeah, and that's why when I do talk to a transfer kid, there's a few questions I like to ask, and if they can answer the questions kind of like I'd like to have them answered, then we can have a discussion. Certainly the graduate program thing has helped here, and the opportunities there for them. I think there's some other good things happening now that's going to help us, in that regard. But still, it comes back to those key core things that we're all looking for. And you can do all those things and go play championship football. And if I didn't think you could do that, I wouldn't be sitting here. And I mean, we school's a challenge, and getting kids admitted is a challenge, and all these other factors. But at the same time, I think the right guys want to be a part of that kind of setup. And we don't win every game, but I think we're a tough out, even when we don't, just because of the makeup of who we are, who our kids are, and they're going to fight to the end. And otherwise, we wouldn't have won that game 2 weeks ago, And yeah, we want to be talented, and we are. But again, it's just those other things are probably as important. It's just the talent aspect of it, and we're doing a really good job recruiting because there's a lot of kids that want to be a part of that. So. And again, as long as I'm here, I'm not going to change, in that regard. But that's been a similar formula here for a long time when we've had success, and I still think that's the best way for us to go.
And Evan and Hugh, just as a follow-up, as Coach is talking, you guys are both sitting there nodding your heads. Obviously, you're two examples of players who've bought into what this head coach and what this coaching staff wants to do as far as developing players. Just your thoughts on the Furman system, or the Furman way, for lack of a better term.
I mean, I would say absolutely. I mean, everything about Furman football is absolutely world class, and I've loved my time here, and you know, can't wait to win a few more games. And I mean, he's absolutely right. So, yeah.
I mean, yeah, just like, you know, echoing what Jumper said, the culture's always been awesome, and you know, you come in as a younger guy, you know, you kind of, we always had, you know, good older guys as examples, and you know, kind of what look up to, and obviously the coaches do a great job and continue to develop us as men, and yeah, like Jumper said, just first class for sure.
And now you're the older guys, right?
That's right.
Well, and Dan, I'd say this too. I mean, I'm having flashbacks to recruiting these two guys. And, you know, Evan had a bunch of stuff. I mean, he had a bunch of stuff, bunch of bigger stuff. I remember that whole process. We finally decided to come to Furman because I think he saw all those things we've talked about. He's certainly had a tremendous career as a player here. And then Hugh, Hugh and I think we were the only football scholarship. You know, he was an extremely bright guy. Had lots of people offering him academic stuff, and he actually could have come here for that as well. But I think maybe the only, he goes to the Shrine Bowl. I think he was the captain of the Shrine Bowl, and all. And I remember coaches kept saying, here's a guy who's just now the conference player of the month. You know, nobody else. There were a lot of guys I think maybe thought, guy's a good player, but you know, I don't know. For us, it's looking at all those. You know, looking at all those attributes and fitting us and fitting our system, and man, what an awesome career he's had. And still got a lot of ball ahead of him. So,
Any other questions from the gathered media here today? Final thought, Clay?
well, just excited to be back in this week. Certainly excited to go play. It'll be a big, be even bigger challenge than Chattanooga because we're going to their place, and. You know, it's kind of interesting to see how this thing's shaking out down there. We're all kind of playing each other. You don't have anybody to blame but yourself. And, polls, great. You know, polls will take care of themselves in the next couple of weeks. And we certainly have put ourselves in a really good position going forward. And I think we totally control whether we get to play forward. You know, I mean, we want to win a conference championship. We need a little help there, but we also got to do our part. So we just need to have a great week of prep, and I know we'll be excited to go play, and hopefully we'll have a bunch of Furman folks down there supporting us, and should be a heck of a game.
As we wrap up, before we get to the football broadcast information, I'll remind you that the men's basketball, again, tips off tonight against North Greenville at Timmons Arena. 7 o'clock tip. On ESPN Plus and the Fan Upstate for the radio broadcast, 6:30 pregame time there. Same time on Friday for the game against Belmont, 6:30 pregame, 7 o'clock tip. And then the women, Wednesday versus Erskine, 7 p.m., and then Friday at PC, 6:30 p.m., both of those games on ESPN Plus. And then Saturday, football at Mercer, huge Southern Conference matchup, 1:30 pregame on the Fan Upstate, and a 3 p.m. kick down in Macon, Georgia. Our thanks again to Clay Hendricks, to Evan Jumper, and Hugh Ryan. Thank you for tuning in to Furman Football Weekly with Coach Clay Hendricks. This has been a Jeff Schetzel and Hunter Reed production.